This is Uncensored Conservatism, episode 188. We're still continuing to look at some mysteries, part 5. So the question today is, who leaked the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade to Politico? Immediately, the usual suspects on the left, like this moron, protested and even yelled out veiled threats at Supreme Court members. But first, let's take a look at some of the dynamics of the Supreme Court decisions. The court first grants the case and briefs are filed. They then schedule and hold oral arguments. They then cast their initial votes, and the Chief Justice tallies the result. He assigns the majority decision to a justice in the majority, the most senior one, or himself. The most senior justice in the minority, in this case, Sonia Sotomayor, would then assign the dissenting opinion, or take it herself. Then the opinions are circulated among the justices and changes made, if any. The whole process is held in secrecy to preserve the integrity of the institution of the court and allow for spirited debate. In this case, a rough draft of the decision was leaked by someone, and that draft was written by Justice Alito, with the key takeaway being the court overturned Roe versus Wade. After the leak, Chief Justice John Roberts ordered an investigation into the leak to be headed by the court's marshal, Gail Curley. Now, every justice has several interns assigned to their office to assist the justices with research and citations. In this case, we know that 82 employees had access to the draft of the opinion in addition to the 9 justices. Now, Curley could not determine who was responsible in the end, but she did note some rather sloppy internal procedures, and one wonders why leaks of decisions previous to this one did not occur. So who stood to benefit? Well, there's 2 schools of thought. Someone on the liberal side of the court or someone on the conservative side of the court. Why would a conservative leak the decision? The theory is that it forced those signing on to the decision to be essentially locked into that decision. However, it's extremely rare when a justice changes their vote. The last time we know it happened was when John Roberts changed his vote to uphold Obamacare by transforming it from a Commerce Clause case to a taxing case through legal sleight of hand. But who could be that conservative? Some have suggested it was someone in Roberts' office, since the leak occurred when concurring opinions were being circulated. Roberts had a more moderate position in the case and was willing to let Roe versus Wade stand, but wanted to eat away at the edges by upholding the law in question from Mississippi. Under this theory, Roberts was attempting to peel off at least one of the 5 who originally decided with Alito. This would have created a plurality decision where the law is upheld, but Roe versus Wade is preserved but weakened, and Roberts sometimes prefers to work in this way. The second suspect on the conservative side would be Alito himself, under the lock them in theory. By leaking the draft, if any of the other 4 then got peeled off by Roberts, they would face the wrath of the pro-life movement and conservatives. Conversely, if the leak came from the liberal side of the court, the suspects are few: Sotomayor, Breyer, and Kagan. Now, Breyer had nothing to lose as he was soon headed for retirement, but he's a stickler for decorum and tradition at the court. So I doubt it was him. I also doubt it was Kagan, just because. So that leaves Sotomayor or somebody in her office. If the purpose was to create a public outcry, then it succeeded. But if the purpose was to use that public outcry to pressure the majority in the decision, it was an epic failure and may have actually hardened the 5 to stick to the decision and ignore the more moderate approach of Roberts. In Curley's report, nearly all clerks were exonerated or they publicly denied they were the source of the leak, all except that it is one. This guy, Amit Jayan, a law clerk for Sotomayor. We know He was a liberal activist who was opposed to the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, who, as a student at Yale, penned an article critical of Kavanaugh. Further, it was a Politico columnist, Josh Gerstein, who published the leaked draft, and Gerstein had previously used Cheyenne on at least 2 occasions for articles, so there was some connection there. Most importantly, what did the leak gain? Well, someone decided to kill Justice Kavanaugh, but that was thwarted. And we know there were some changes to the final draft where the bulk of the decision was untouched, with the deletions having to do with citations and the additions, which were basically answering the dissenting opinion, which is not unusual between a draft and the final decision. So it really accomplished nothing except scaremongering on the left and some unhinged statements by politicians like Chucky Schumer. Anyway, moving on. So this chick named Audrey Hale, a transgender who preferred the name Aiden, decided, or non-binary or whatever it was, decided to walk into a Christian school one day in Nashville, Tennessee and kill some innocent people. Okay, so I'm not a gun control advocate, but I think a case can be made for keeping guns out of the hands of transgender weirdos. I mean, if you don't know or are confused about your sex, then you shouldn't have a gun. But I digress. But anyway, in the aftermath, it was revealed that Hale left what some described as a manifesto. The FBI intervened and said its contents should not be released because it might inspire a copycat. The Tennessean, a newspaper, sued to have the manifesto released, while most of the parents at the Covenant School were also against publication of the manifesto's contents. Eventually, the FBI handed over the manifesto to local authorities, and in November of that year, Steven Crowder, a podcaster, released 3 pages of the manifesto that was leaked to him. People were more upset about the leak of the manifesto than they were about the shooting, by the way. So what was in this manifesto or journal or whatever the hell you want to call it? Well, there's a lot of confusion about what Hale is itself. I mean, you know, sometimes referring to itself as a female, sometimes as a male. There was an outline of the day of the shooting with an hour-by-hour breakdown of what had to be done, and there's several rants about their gender confusion, which confirm that this chick was seriously fucked up in the head. A social media posting that morning from Hale confirmed that she was prepared to die. Suicide by cop, they sometimes call it. Why the authorities try to keep this manifesto from the press is a mystery. I think the reason is it didn't play very well into the convenient pro-transgender narrative at the time. I mean, here was a confused 28-year-old male wannabe. You see, transgender isn't to be considered a mental disorder. It's just someone born into the wrong body or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it came out and there were no copycats, and now we know that Audrey Hale was a weirdo. So tomorrow I'm going to take a break from this series, but I'll still be here with episode 189 and pick up the mystery series again on Saturday. When I look at who brought that bag of Coke into the White House, and remember that Chinese spy balloon that Biden let drift over the country? What intelligence was it gathering? Until then, have a great day and a more pleasant tomorrow.